Relax and take notes while I take totes of the marijuana smoke. Throw you in a choke, gun smoke, gun smoke. Biggie Smalls for mayor, the rap slayer, the hooker layer. Motherfucker, say your prayers. Hail Mary, full of grace. Smack the bitch in the face, take her Gucci bag and a North Face off her back. Jab her if she act funny with the money. Oh, you got me mistaken, honey. I don't wanna rape ya, I just want the paper, the visa, the pisha. I'm out like the vapors. Who's the one?
The 320-pound inmate slammed his hand on Rocky Balboa's table and leaned in close enough that every man in that cafeteria held their breath. What Rocky did in the next 4 seconds did not just silence that inmate. It silenced every single person in that room for the rest of the day. Nobody warned the big man that morning. Nobody told him what happened to the last guy who pushed Rocky Balboa into a corner. If you are new here, we drop these stories every single day. Hit that subscribe button right now and do not miss what happens next. The cafeteria at Greystone Correctional Facility was the kind of place where noise never stopped. Steel trays scraping against metal tables, voices bouncing off concrete walls. The low hum of 200 men packed into a room that was built for 150. Every meal was the same controlled chaos, and every man who had been inside long enough knew the unwritten rules of that room by heart. You did not take another man's seat. You did not stare too long. You did not make a move that could not be explained in 3 seconds or less. These were not rules that anybody wrote down. They were rules that men learned the hard way, usually on their first week, sometimes on their first day. Rocky Balboa had been at Greystone for 41 days when the incident happened. He had kept to himself for every single one of those 41 days. He ate at the same spot near the far left wall, a table with a cracked leg that wobbled every time someone set a tray down on it. He chose that table on purpose. It was away from the main corridors, away from the gathering spots, away from the territory that the louder men in the facility had already claimed for themselves. Rocky was not there to claim anything. He was there to do his time and get out. Every morning he woke up, counted the days, and reminded himself that the only fight that mattered was the one he was fighting against time. The man everyone called Big Luther had been at Greystone for 6 years. In those 6 years, Luther had turned the cafeteria into something that belonged to him. Not officially. No paperwork said so. No guard would ever admit it out loud. But every inmate who had spent more than a week inside those walls understood the simple fact that the cafeteria was Luther's room. He decided where the tension lived. He decided when the volume went up and when it came back down. He was 6 feet and 6 inches tall, and he weighed 320 pounds, and he had never in 6 years met a man inside Greystone who made him feel like he needed to slow down or think twice. Luther noticed Rocky on day 3. He did not say anything on day 3. He did not say anything on day 10 or day 20. He watched. That was how Luther operated. He watched a man long enough to understand what that man was made of before he made his move. And what he saw when he watched Rocky Balboa was a man who carried himself quietly, but who walked through that cafeteria like the noise around him was not quite real. Maybe the chaos was something happening in another room. Luther had seen scared men try to look calm before. He knew what that looked like. This was not that. This was a something different, and that difference was what made Luther decide that he needed to address it. On the 41st day, Luther walked across the cafeteria during the lunch hour. He walked slowly. He always walked slowly. There was no reason to rush when every man in the room was already watching you move. His crew stayed at their usual table. This was intentional. Luther did not need backup for a conversation. Needing backup meant you were not sure of yourself, and Luther was always sure of himself. He crossed the room, stopped beside the cracked leg table, and brought his right hand down flat on the surface with a sound that cut through the noise like a blade. Every head in that cafeteria turned. Rocky looked up from his tray. His expression did not change. He looked at Luther the way a man looks at something he has already thought about and already decided how to handle. He set his fork down. He did not push back from the table. He did not stand up. He just looked. Luther leaned forward until his face was close enough that the men at the nearest tables could see the detail of what was happening between them. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that only Rocky could hear the words clearly. But the posture, the angle of his body, the way his jaw was set told the rest of the room everything it needed to know about what kind of conversation this was. He told Rocky to sit down and stay quiet, not in those exact words. But the meaning was clear. Luther was establishing something in that moment that had nothing to do with the food on the table or the chair Rocky was sitting in. He was telling Rocky where he stood inside Greystone. He was telling him that the quiet corner by the far left wall did not make him invisible. He was telling him that a man did not get to exist inside this facility without acknowledging who ran the room. Rocky let him finish. He did not interrupt. He did not look away. He sat there and he listened to every word. And when Luther was done talking, the cafeteria was so quiet that the hum of the ventilation system above them was suddenly the loudest sound in the building. Then Rocky spoke. He said 4 words. The men closest to the table would argue later about exactly which 4 words they were. Some said it was one thing, some said it was another, but every single man who was in that cafeteria agreed on what happened in the 3 seconds after Rocky finished speaking. Luther straightened up, not because he chose to, because something in those 4 words rearranged the air between them in a way that Luther had not anticipated. His body responded before his pride could stop it. He pulled back by 2 inches, maybe 3, and in a room full of men who understood body language better than they understood anything else in the world. 2 inches was a continent. Luther's jaw tightened. He had not come across the room to have a conversation that ended with him taking a step back. That was not how this was supposed to go. He had come to establish something, and what he had established instead was a question that was now hanging in the air above every table in that room. He could feel it. He could feel 200 men asking the same question in silence. He reached out and grabbed the edge of Rocky's tray. It was not a question anymore after that. It was a statement, a physical declaration made in front of every witness in the room. The tray slid 6 inches across the table. Rocky's cup tipped but did not fall. Rocky stood up. He did not stand up fast. He did not stand up the way a man stands up when he is reacting. He stood up the way a man stands up when he has already decided everything that is about to happen, and he is simply moving his body into the position that the next few seconds require. There was no anger in it. There was no fear in it. There was just weight and stillness and the particular kind of quiet that Rocky Balboa carried in his body like a second skeleton. What happened in the next 4 seconds was over before most of the room fully processed that it had started. The men who were closest said later that they heard a sound. Not a loud sound. Not the kind of sound that movies make it seem like. Just a short, dense, specific sound. The kind of sound that ends conversations. Luther did not fall dramatically. He did not spin or crash into another table. He went straight down, the way a building goes down when the structure underneath it is suddenly no longer there. His knees hit the floor first, then his hands, then he was still. The cafeteria did not erupt, it did not cheer. It did not gasp in the way that crowds gasp in films. It simply went completely, entirely, absolutely silent. 200 men sitting in a room built for 150, and the only sound was the ventilation system humming above them. Rocky picked up his tray. He set it back to where it had been. He sat back down. He picked up his fork. Nobody moved for a long time after that. Luther was taken to the medical unit and kept there for 2 days. When he came back to general population, he did not walk through the cafeteria the same way he had walked through it for 6 years. He sat at a different table. He did not cross the room. He did not make eye contact with the far left wall. Nobody in Greystone ever heard him talk about what happened that afternoon, and nobody asked him to. Some things inside a facility like that do not need to be discussed. They simply become part of the air that everyone breathes, part of the understanding that shifts without announcement and without ceremony. The cracked leg table by the far left wall became the most respected piece of furniture in that cafeteria, not because of what it was, because of who sat at it. Rocky Balboa did not ask for what happened after that day. He did not seek it out. He went back to counting his days and doing his time and keeping to himself. But something had changed inside those walls, and every man who had been in that cafeteria on that afternoon understood exactly what it was. If this story hit different, you already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and turn the bell notification on, because we drop a new Rocky Balboa story every single day. Every single one of them is the kind of story that nobody tells, but everybody needs to hear. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think Rocky said in those 4 seconds. The answer might surprise you. We will see you in the next one.